Good morning, children. Welcome back to class 9 geography classes. Children, last week Earth as a planet chapter was explained to you all, and so hope the lesson was clear to you. The notes regarding to the lesson the Earth as a planet is sent to you in the form of PDF. Children, take down the notes of that lesson in your classworks and make sure, children, you have to write down the name of the lesson, the chapter name, and the date without fail. See, children, without writing the date, it is the notes is incomplete to you all. Whenever the notes is asked for you to submit, you have to submit the notes. So make sure you start your notes with the date. Write down the name of the unit and name of the lesson also. Okay, children, fine. Now moving forward, today we are going to learn the next chapter of your syllabus, that is Geographic Grid, Latitudes and Longitudes. This is your chapter 2 of unit 1, Geographic Grid, Latitudes and Longitudes. Children, in this lesson we are going to explain to you about the introduction to the lesson. Then you will learn about the concept of latitudes, and then the parallels of latitudes and trees and its uses, parallels of latitudes and its uses, and then parallels of longitudes, which is the prime meridian, and the time regarding the time zones, and GMT is nothing but the Greenwich Mean Time, and ideal, which is the industrial international dateline, and you will also learn about the calculation of time and the great circles and their uses. So let us learn one by one. Children, the earth's surface is so vast that unless a mathematical method is used, it is impossible to locate a place on it. So for this reason, imaginary lines are drawn on the globe. So as the lesson says, latitudes and longitudes. What are latitudes? Latitudes are nothing but they are the imaginary lines drawn on the globe. These lines running east to west parallel to the equator, and the lines running north to south passing through the poles are called lines of longitudes. So when you see at the diagram of the geographic grid, you will understand this concept of latitudes and longitudes. Children, the intersection of latitudes and longitudes pinpoint a place on the Earth's surface. These crisscrossing lines form a framework known as geographic grid. See, when you draw in your mathematics, the graph, you might have doing the sums based on the graphical representations. So what do you see, what do you observe in those graphs? You have a crisscross intersections of the verticals and the horizontal lines. When these intersection of the vertical and horizontal lines, when they meet, a small cell is formed. This is known as a grid. But in the same way, when these latitudes and the longitudes are drawn on the globe, they are known as geographic grid. So let me explain to you one by one. Today we are going to learn the lesson latitudes and longitudes. So children, I have explained to you what is the term geographic grid. Geographic grid is nothing but the intersection of the latitudes and longitudes. Okay. So as I have explained to you, latitudes are nothing but they are the imaginary lines. They are nothing but they are imaginary lines. They are parallel to each other. These latitudes are parallel to each other. So these latitudes, when they joining all the places, they have the same latitude towards north or south of the equator. And children, these latitudes are at an angular distance of a place from north or south of the equator. And these latitudes are marked in degrees, with equator being 0 degrees. From the middle of the earth, the center of the earth, it is marked as 0 degrees. And children, the latitudes are calculated according to the angle of a place makes the center of the earth. And since children, these latitudes are parallel to each other, or the parallel to the equator and each other, they are called as parallels of latitudes. And children, each parallel of latitude is a full circle. However, only the equator is a great circle. So which is the great circle, children? Equator is the great circle. You can see in the picture these parallels. The lines of latitudes are parallel to each other. See, equator is the great circle and all the latitudes are parallel to each other. See, you can observe in this diagram, children. Fine. So now we will learn about the important parallels of latitudes. These are the important parallels of latitudes. Equator being the great circle and which moves in the center of the globe or center of the earth. The first most important parallel is equator, and actually there are 181 parallels of latitude at 1 degree interval. There are 181 parallels of latitudes at 1 degree interval, and equator is the longest line of latitude. Then comes North Pole, which is 90 degrees at the north, and then the South Pole at an angular distance of 90 degrees south of the equator. The Tropic of Cancer. See children, you can see in the picture, this diagram is very important. You are going to draw this diagram in your classworks. Okay, that comes later when we give you the notes for this particular lesson. Then the Tropic of Cancer is a line of latitude located 23.5 degree north of the equator. Then comes Tropic of Capricorn, 23.5 degrees south, and then Arctic Circle, 66.5 degree north latitude, and Antarctic Circle represents 66.5 degree south. These are the important parallels of latitudes. So, what are the important parallels of latitudes? With the diagrammatic representation, with this help of this diagram, you are able to explain. So children, these latitudes divide the earth as northern and the southern hemisphere. These latitudes divide the earth into northern and southern hemispheres. Children, the equator that runs midway between the poles divides the earth into equal hemispheres. So the equator, see, you can see the equator divides the earth into two equal hemispheres, that is the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. The poles, the north pole and the south pole, they are opposite to each other and they are at the extreme ends of the sphere. See, you can see it, isn't it? They are at the extreme ends of the sphere and they are each located at angular distance of 90 degrees from the equator. And children, the length of the equator is equal to the circumference of the earth. Yes, since the circumference of the circle is equal to 360 degrees, the angular distance is roughly equal to 111 kilometers. Simply you will remember only the figures. There is no in detail calculation of this circumference and all. So you will just remember there are 181 parallels of latitude at an 1 degree interval, and each 1 degree interval is equal to 111 kilometers. Okay, so this is all about what are latitudes, what are lines of latitudes, and the important parallels of latitudes, and what is the purpose of these latitudes. Equator, how it is dividing the earth into two spheres, and what are the degrees of these two spheres, and what is the angular distance of 1 degree interval. Okay children, then moving forward we will learn about the uses of latitudes. So the latitudes, the purpose of latitudes are many. There are so many uses of latitudes. These latitudes help us to find the location of a place. These latitudes help us to find the location of a place and to measure the distance of a place. Not only the location of the place, they help us to measure the distance of a place, and they carve into the heat zones. They not only they carve into the heat zones. You can see the heat zones present on this. See, children, these like torrid zone, frigid zone, temperate zone. Okay, these carve the latitudes. The purpose of latitudes or the use of latitudes is they carve the earth into the heat belts. You can also call them as heat belts or the thermal zones of the earth. So latitudes enable us to divide the whole earth into different climatic zones. So these are the purpose of or the uses of the latitudes. Let me repeat, children, this is very much important. In briefly, if I have to say, latitudes are nothing but they are the imaginary lines drawn on the globe. Okay, and the main latitudes are the equator, the north pole, the south pole, the tropic of Cancer, the tropic of Capricorn, Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle. And the uses of latitudes are to find the location of a place, to measure the distance of a place, and it carves the earth into the heat zones. Okay, children, so this is all about lines of latitudes. I hope the point is very much clear to you, children. Then we will learn about lines of longitude. Now next we will learn about the lines of longitude. What are lines of longitudes? What are longitudes? Longitudes are nothing but they are the angular distance of a place which move from east or west of the prime meridian. Now here you can ask, what is a prime meridian? Yes, prime meridian is nothing but it is the line of longitude whose angular distance is defined as 0 degrees. It passes through Greenwich near London. Prime meridian passes through Greenwich near London. As equator passes in middle, exactly these lines of longitudes, they are the vertical lines drawn in between the earth, and this prime meridian passes through Greenwich near London. So prime meridian is an important longitude, important vertical line as latitude. In the latitude, equator is an important latitude. Okay, children, then the lines to the west of Greenwich are suffixed with the degree west, and those east of Greenwich are suffixed with E. For example, 60 degrees west and 60 degrees east. Same way as in the latitudes, we are writing 0 degrees and 23.5 degree north and 23.5 degrees south. Exactly, for the longitudes also, they move from north to south, and we are mentioning with west and it is east. It is suffixed by degree W and degree E. Children, there are a total of 363 lines of latitudes at 1 degree interval, and each 1 degree interval from both east and west, other full circles will be 1 degree, and they are 179 degrees, 2 degrees and 60 to 120 degrees and so on. So all the meridians of longitudes, these longitudes are also known as meridians of longitudes, and these meridians of longitude converge at the poles and are thus of equal length. Children, these meridians of longitudes, they converge at the poles and they are thus of equal length. Children, what is a meridian? Actually, the meridian is derived from the Latin word meridianum, meaning it is a noon. Meridianum is nothing but it is the noon. The sun crosses a meridian at noon. All places on a particular meridian will have noon at the same time. So, children, what are longitudes? Longitudes are nothing but they are the imaginary lines, and they are at the angular distance of a place east or west of the prime meridian. And prime meridian is nothing but it is a line of longitude whose angular distance is defined as 0 degrees, and it passes through Greenwich near London. Okay, children. Now we will learn about the time. Longitude help us to calculate the time. The lines of longitudes are stated earlier are also known as meridians. Yes, children. So it is known as meridian. Meridian is nothing but it's a noon. At a particular moment of time, if it is 12 noon at a given longitude, it must be 12 noon at all places on this longitude. Okay, so the earth makes a complete circle on its axis. Children, earth rotates on its axis, as we all of us know, earth rotates on its axis, and it covers 360 degrees longitudes in 24 hours. So to say that it 1 degree longitude is taken as for the 4 minutes. So thus, if it is at 12 noon in the 0 degree longitude, it must be 4 minutes past 12 noon. So towards the east at the 1 degree east longitude or 15 degrees east longitude, it must be 1 p.m. as 1 degree is equal to 4 minutes, and 4 into 15 degrees it is 60 minutes. So it should be a 1 hour. So 12 o'clock at the noon at 1 degree longitude, when you move to the 15 degrees to the east, it should be 1 p.m. and towards the west it will be 1 hour less, because the earth rotates from west to east. As you move towards west, you subtract or deduct, and as you move towards east, you add. Or as you move towards the west, you lose the time, and as you move towards the east, you add the time or you gain the time. So this is the concept of calculating the time. Children, this is an oral explanation. The theoretical explanation of the calculation of the time, when we meet personally in the classroom, we are going to learn with the examples and work out the working examples how the time is being calculated or how the times are being derived at the different places on the globe with the examples, worked out examples. So every 1 degree longitude is shown with 4 minutes. And not only this is the use of the longitudes. And not only this, the longitudes help us to divide the earth into eastern and the western hemisphere. It also helps us to derive for the eastern and the western hemisphere. This division holds good practically for all the purposes. However, children, any two diametrical opposite lines can also divide the earth into two equal hemispheres. So this is about the longitudes and the calculation of the time. And the time, it can be the local time. How this local time can be obtained? This, children, the local time of a place is obtained by the overhead of the sun. So before, earlier, when there were no watches, or how the people used to calculate the time, they used to look at the sun and derived at the they used to calculate the time. When the sun was overhead of this head, then they used to say that it is 12 noon in the afternoon. Okay, children. So this is a purpose, or this is a use of the longitudes. And children, these longitudes, they help us to divide at the different time zones and standard time and the time zones, which I'll explain to you later. Before that, let us simply learn about the divisions or the differentiation between lines of latitude and lines of longitude. See, these are the important differentiations between the lines of latitudes and lines of longitude. See, children, latitude is an angular distance of a place north or south of the equator, and longitude is an angular distance from east or west of the prime meridian. Lines of latitude are parallel to equator, but whereas longitudes converge at the poles. Each parallel of latitude is a full circle, but whereas longitude, it is a semicircle. And latitude degrees are measured from equator, and these longitudes are measured with the prime meridian, and the distance between two lines of latitude is approximately 111 kilometers, and this is about the time 1 degree is with the 4 minutes. Children, the lines of latitudes are used to find the location of a place, and this longitude is helping us to find the local time or the standard time, and so on. So these are the very much important differentiations between the lines of latitude and lines of longitude. Okay, children? Yes. Then let us learn about the time zones and the standard time. Okay, what are time zones? Children, to overcome the confusion while allowing to know the places on the earth has been divided into 24 time zones according to the number of hours in a day. So the earth has been divided into 24 hours of the time zones. That is why we calculate the day for 24 hours. So the earth also takes for one day it rotates. For one rotation it takes 24 hours. Okay, and each degree, 1 degree is at 4 minutes, and the 15 degrees it is for 15 degrees it is for 1 hour, and for 360 degrees it is 24 hours. So this calculation part, children, just orally or theoretically we are explaining to you. When we meet, we will calculate the practically with a worked out example. Okay, so what is the standard meridian? Now let us learn about the standard meridian or the standard time. Children, the uniform time based on the central meridian is known as standard time. That is standard time. The uniform time based on the central meridian is nothing but a longitude. So the uniform time based on a central meridian is known as standard time, and the standard time must always be divisible by 7.5 degrees. Okay, this standard time is always divided at the 7.5 degrees, and our Indian standard time is derived at 83.5 degree east, or 82 degrees 30 minutes is the central meridian which passes near Allahabad. Okay, so the Indian standard meridian is taken as 82.5 degree east, or 82 degrees 30 minutes in the east, which is a central meridian and which is near Allahabad. Okay, so this is how the standard time is being calculated for the different countries. And few countries, they have two standard times, because when the meridian it passes through different places, and so they have two different standard times. Children, now let us learn about the Greenwich Mean Time. For fixing the time zones, the time at Greenwich 0 degree longitude has been selected as the mean time. For calculating the time zones, the time of Greenwich, that is the 0 degree longitude, has been selected as the mean time. So, thus if it is 12 noon at Greenwich at 15 degree longitude, the time will be 1 p.m. Okay, and at the 30 degree longitude the time will be 2 p.m. Simply, as you move towards the east, you keep on adding, and as you move towards the west, you lose it or you have to deduct the time. This is all about the standard time and the Greenwich Mean Time and the Indian Standard Time and the 24 time zones. Children, how many time zones is the earth divided into? Completely, they are of 24 time zones. See, children, the worked out examples, we will do it when you all meet in the school. So let us learn about the international dateline also. International dateline, the line of longitude at 180 degrees is one and the same for east or west of the prime meridian. So opposite to the prime meridian is the international dateline, which is at 180 degrees. Okay, so the international dateline 180 degrees. While crossing this dateline from west to east, a day is deducted or the time is fixed backward by 1 day, and when crossing the international dateline from east to west, a day is added or the calendar is fixed 1 day ahead. So this is how the International Day is calculated. And children, to avoid this confusion also, or of having different dates within the same country, the date line bends and goes zigzag at Bering Strait between Siberia and Alaska, and at Fiji, Tonga, New Zealand, and some other islands. Okay. So, children, these are about the time zones, the standard time, the Greenwich Mean Time, and Indian Standard Time, and the international dateline. Proper notes will be given to you, children. So, follow the notes when you take down the notes. Go through the notes once again, and which will help you to understand the lesson more easily. So, last point of the lesson is the great and the small circles. Children, the great circle, which is the great circle? The equator is the great circle, and the prime meridian also, you can say. And there are some characteristics for this great circles. You need to know the characteristics of these great circles. A great circle is theoretically a circle formed by the intersection of the Earth's surface, and which is an imaginary plane that passes through the center of the Earth, and which divide the Earth into two equal parts. So, as the equator is the center of the great circle, it is the great circle which is helping the Earth or the globe to divide into two parts or two hemispheres, which is the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Same with the prime meridian or the international dateline, the other side, which is helping us to divide the Earth into the eastern and the western hemispheres. And children, all such circles must pass through or touch the center of the circle, and these meridians, they converge at the poles, or they move from north to south and they meet at the poles. But whereas equator is in between the circle, and which divides the Earth into the northern and the southern hemisphere, and the indefinite number of circles that touch the two opposite ends of the sphere can be drawn on a sphere, and they always they bisect also each other. Irrespective of the characteristic, children, the equator is the largest possible circle among all lines of latitude. Okay. So this is the characteristics of the great circle. Which is the great circle now? The equator is the great circle. There are some uses of these great circles. We have some uses for these great circles. Navigators use great circles to find the shortest distance between any two points on the Earth's surface. And a great circle route is the shortest distance between two places on the Earth and lies on the arc of the great circle. Using this hypothesis, the shortest route from New York to Moscow would be over the North Pole. Thus, it does not take into account restrictions such as weather or any other conditions. So, children, what is the first important use of the great circle? It helps the navigators use great circles to find the shortest route between any two points on the Earth's surface, or it is also known as a great circle route. And children, these great circle routes are especially important for places that are on opposite sides of the globe. And these great circles are also used by the meteorologists to determine the climate and weather conditions in a region. Simply to say, to sum up, the uses of the great circles are, they are used by the navigators, and they are very important to know the routes especially, and the important uses, they are used by the meteorologists. So this is all about your lesson, lines of latitudes and longitudes. So quickly to sum up, children, what did we learn today? We have learned about just the introduction part of the lesson, and then the concept of the latitudes. What are latitudes? The definitions of the latitudes, the uses of the latitudes, and the important parallels of latitudes. Not only that, we have also learnt about longitudes. What is a longitude? What are the uses of the longitudes, and the time zones, the Indian Standard Time, the International Dateline, and the Greenwich Mean Time. And we also learnt the calculation part of the time. Only theoretically, simple explanation was given to you for the calculation of the time. And then we also learnt about the great circles and their uses. Okay, children. So this is all about your lesson, the geographic grid, latitudes and longitudes. So next in the next class, the notes regarding to this lesson will be sent to you all. You need to take down the notes clearly. Once again, it has been informed to you children, when you write down the notes, start your notes with the date. Whichever day the notes are sent to you, with on that day, the whatever is the date, you mention the date, write down the name of the unit, name of the lesson also, and write down the points as writing the heading as important points. Based on these points, the worksheet will be sent to you. You need to answer these worksheet or the homework questions, which I will explain to you in the next class. Hope children, today's lesson is clear to you all. And whenever the notes is sent to you, read the notes, go through it and try to. Any doubts, it will be cleared later on. Okay.